Principles of Finance, a la Schmup. Ethical tussles in government projects. Okay, here's the $800 billion question. Should the government, when going out to bid a project, require the bidders to employ union labor? Like, should that even be a requirement? Or should there be a minimum hourly wage stipulated, which, basically requires union work there? Or should the bid be, quote, labor blind, unquote, and just get the best price for the same product or service as would happen in normal corporate America?
Illustrative example time.
A given project costs $100 million for a minimum wage / union embracing buyer / employer. Call it a new sewer system for a big city, or a dam in front of a big river to provide water to the city below, or, a road. That's the cost if it's a union job. $100 million. Union bidders, union workers, union pension fund contributions, $100 million. Overhead. With union workers, the job will be vastly more pleasant to build for the workers. Unions look out for their own workers. They negotiate most often not just for higher wages for their employees, but rather for the employer to be required to have more employees, like more workers. Why? Well, because those workers pay union dues, and the math basically works out so that it's more favorable to the union to get dues from lots of modestly paid workers than from a smaller number of meaningfully higher paid workers, right? The union's just doing what it was hired to do. So instead of 437 workers in a non-union sewer system build, this particular job will take 682 workers because it's a union job. It's union friendly. Well, there will be additional tracking layers and craft service costs for whatever that union was able to negotiate on behalf of the members who pay the lawyers there of the union to negotiate for them, right? They're good. The non-union flavor of this job would have cost $70 million, $30 million in our $100 million union job. The non-union rock haulers cost $20 an hour. The union guys cost $40. The union workers get a $5 an hour overhead, quote, burden, unquote, for their labors. And that burden covers things like health insurance and accident insurance and all kinds of other things that we don't have to go into here. The project comprises a lot of spend on labor, but it isn't only labor that rings up that $70 to then $100 million in extra cost. Should the workers be required to buy and/or only use parts and supplies from companies that produce those parts in America? In buying parts made in America by only union labor. Yeah, those parts cost a lot more than the parts made in Russia by the conglomerate polluters are us. Any individual employee in a given project could only work 36 hours in a union job. Any hour worked after that was charged at time and a half, meaning that a $26 an hour worker would then get $39 an hour for having worked that 37th hour that week. Well, whenever a box over 50 pounds is moved in a union job, contracts require that 2 workers move that box, not 1. Lunch hour had to actually be a full hour with a smoking area reserved. And all holidays had to be respected. Like even Talk Like a Pirate Day. And if you didn't respect it, you would hear about it from HR. So union job $100 million, non-union $70 million. So what's $30 million among friends or among taxpayers? Well, it's a lot if you had wanted the local library to stay afloat, or to have the community college move out of the decrepit old military barrack buildings, or to have your local pension fund solvent so that retiring old people didn't actually starve. Or just keep the tax dollars in your pocket. Yeah, well, none of these things will happen now that we've gone with a $100 million union job instead of just taking the cheapest bidder. And remember that it's you the taxpayer, paying that extra $30 million. Normal taxpayers, we pay it all. So if your tax bill last year was $11,345, do you think you should have been able to vote for non-union government bidders and paid $11,211 in tax instead? The government mandate of union bid jobs cost you, the taxpayer, exactly $134 last year. And yeah, it's a totally arbitrary number we just made up, but if you go back and look at the numbers, we're probably not far off here. And not that the number is bad, but was it fair? Was it ethical? Was it the right thing to do? What if half the tax-paying voting population runs their own small businesses, dry cleaners to golf supply shops, and they hate unions? Is it fair to them to give that extra bill, that $134 out of their pockets, how many golf tees did you have to sell to earn that $134? Is it fair to make them give that money to union laborers? And what about workers in the union? What if they don't want or need the union benefits? Maybe they're married and they get health care elsewhere on someone else's nickel. Or maybe they're masochists and they just enjoy physical pain. Is it fair to make those union workers, forcibly pay dues to the union? There are a bunch of Supreme Court cases coming down the line that address this issue from a few different angles, and it'll be largely up to those 9 folks in the black robes to decide what's, quote, fair, unquote. So a lot to think about. Union workers benefit from unions, obviously, but what about those who are harmed, like small business owners who are entirely non-union, which, by the way, is a lot of people, and some would say the core of our nation's economy. So yeah, should Uncle Sam be so involved, or should he, keep his hands to himself?